Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So today I've got a 98% rated free hit team, and I did have a 98% rated wildcard team a couple of days ago, but don't worry, they're not the same team. There is about 9 or 10 changes to the squad for this video, and there are some key differences between a free hit team and a wildcard team. And for a free hit, you can just find these players that you want for 1 week that you don't already own and isolate them when they might have tough fixtures the rest of the time. Now, obviously, there's not much data available due to there being only one game week, and a lot of these players are like 1 week risks, which kind of go against a lot of the data. So it wouldn't make sense to have charts in this video. But I hope you still enjoy it anyway. And if you do, please do subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on 500 subscribers, which would be a really cool milestone to reach. So all the support is really appreciated. So let's take a look at the team. And we're going to start in goal. And I'm going with Dubravka in goal as my starting goalkeeper. Now, the reason for this is because the rest of the squad is quite expensive. You can throw everything into this one game week. And because goalkeepers have the lowest ceiling and the smallest difference in points between them, I decided just to go for two 4 million goalkeepers. And for Dubravka, it's probably the best fixture Burnley are going to have all season. So Sunderland at home is great. I think it's important to target, especially defenders, for a free hit, those that are playing at home because you're just more likely to keep a clean sheet when you're at home than when you're away. Of course, Burnley could lose, but for the price you pay, I think investing in the rest of the squad really does pay off. In defence, gone pretty big here. We're going to talk about Gabriel because a bit like Dubravka, Arsenal, they don't have the best fixtures, and sure, they can win in those fixtures, a bit like they did away at Man United, they could win 1-0, but the likelihood is a lot less. And I think, that you're not going to want to own many Arsenal players until after game week 6, but you can get on them here. In fact, I've gone for the triple up in this team. Now, Leeds at home is a good fixture. I know a lot of people are thinking, Leeds are a good team this year, and they could be. But there's going to be a big difference in these promoted sides as to whether they're playing at home or away. And because they're going away to Arsenal, they'll have exerted a lot of energy on that Monday night fixture. They've had a day's less rest than Arsenal have done. I do think Arsenal have a good chance of keeping a clean sheet. Now, in terms of DEFCON points for Gabriel, he only got 7. I think Saliba got 14. But I don't think DEFCON points, defensive contributions, are going to matter too much when you're playing Leeds at home. I don't think either defender is going to have much of an opportunity to get 10 of those. So in that case, it comes down to who's got the most attacking threat. And I definitely think that's Gabriel over Saliba, which is why he's in here. I think for Tarkowski and Gahey, they're also both at home. All the defense is at home. And I think, we saw in game week 1, Tarkowski, he does get a lot of defensive contributions, and I would fully expect him to keep that going against Brighton. And I think Gahey, whilst Nottingham Forest scored 3 goals against Brentford, I think they only scored 1 goal in 7 games. And, people are kind of going a bit overboard, from their first game compared to their 1 goal in 7 games pre-season form. So I think this game week, it will show us a lot more data. You're getting twice the amount of games than you would do in one game week by having a second game week. So it allows you to kind of just isolate certain players. I think if you could afford Lacroix, I think he is probably more likely to get defensive contributions points, but I couldn't in this team, so I've gone for Gahey instead. So in midfield, it's a pretty heavy midfield here, and we're going to talk about Saka again, a bit like Gabriel. We've gone for the Arsenal triple up overall, and he is going to be captain. I think whilst he might not be on penalties, I do think he remains a fantastic option and probably the best captaincy option here because there is no Salah. I couldn't afford to get him in this team. Obviously, you could condense down the team, but and invest in Salah. I think because Salah's got Newcastle away, that is a tough fixture. Going away to Newcastle, no matter what they've got going on with the Isak situation. Going away to Newcastle and getting a result is difficult, let alone getting some attacking returns for captaincy. So I think Saka is probably the safest pick, and those are the reasons why I've not got Salah in here. I do also have Palmer. I think Palmer is an interesting option, and if you already own him, then it depends how similar your team is to this team, whether you free hit or not. But I think if you don't own Palmer, it is a good sort of risk-free way just to get him in for a week with a good fixture. And it's almost like you're renting your FPL team for a week. If he does well, then you can consider, you know, getting him in on a free transfer. I have gone for Reinders and Semenyo, and I think they're both quite good picks this week, both at home. I would expect Reinders to start again, and he might just be, a bit of a 1 week wonder, but by all accounts, he's here to stay. So I think he is someone that, again, get him in for 1 week, and if it doesn't work out, you're not got the pressure to sort of sell him again. And I think Semenyo with that Wolves fixture at home is just a really good game. So up front, we've gone for Haaland. So no Salah, but we do have Haaland in this free hit team. And because he's got Spurs at home, I think that's a good fixture for them. Man City will be on the attack. Spurs defence is still under question. A lot of people are sort of saying they're going to be better than they were last season, but we're yet to sort of see it. And for all it's worth, I do think they'll be better than they were last season, but it'll be a lot harder to be worse, you know? So I do think I can see Haaland being the highest point scorer in this game week. And chances are a lot of you don't own Haaland already, So I think if you don't own a player like him and you want to get him in for a game week, this is probably the game week to do it. You could possibly, get him in on a free transfer maybe you save your free hit to game week 6 when they play Burnley at home. But I think Spurs at home is just as good. And if you wanted to captain him instead of Saka, I think that's totally fine as well. In the rest of the front line, we've gone for Gyökeres and Evan Nielsen. Havertz is now injured for the game week, so that makes me a lot more certain on Gyökeres. I think Leeds at home, he'll be wanting to score his first league goal for Arsenal. I think Arsenal do have goals in them against this Leeds team. People are saying they're a lot more solid, but I think it's like I said it before, it's totally different when they're going away from home. And I think a couple of early goals for Arsenal, and it could be floodgates opening. And Evan Nielsen, he doubles in the Bournemouth attack. We've actually got a Bournemouth triple up here. I think Wolves at home is a great fixture. Now, because Wolves are likely to set up a bit more defensively, I think it does speak more to Evan Nielsen scoring goals rather than Semenyo. Semenyo is more score a goal on the break. Evan Nielsen is more score a goal when your team has a lot of possession. I think having both of them is totally fine because, like we say, you can overload on specific teams in a free hit and get away with it because it's just for 1 week. So the rest of the fixtures don't really matter. So overall, it came through at 98% rated. So shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for their team rater tool. I think it's a really good team. And I think because you only need it for 1 week, it looks great. I think if you started looking at it as a wildcard team, you'd probably have questions, especially with a triple Arsenal in there. But I think because it's a free hit, you're doing absolutely fine. And it did also come in at 99.7 million. So that is something to be aware of that everyone can afford this team. So strengths are it doesn't disrupt your squad. So what I mean is the fact that, you may be a bit unsure about your game week 1 team. You don't want to make transfers just yet. You can use your free hit just to buy a bit more time and get that bit more data and see what a bit more of your original team and who you want to keep and who you might want to sell. And it also attacks the really short-term fixtures. You're looking for huge upside early on in the season to sort of propel yourself in your FPL team. Using the free hit can be used any time in the season. But I think having one where, maybe you don't like the look of your game week 2 team, maybe you want to try some different players in your squad, I think it's a reasonable time to use it. The weaknesses are, of course, it uses your free hit. And you kind of you don't get to use it again until halfway through the season. So it does limit your flexibility moving forwards. However, if you do think that it's worth it for your team, think it's okay to go for it. I wouldn't be using it at this stage of the season, but I'm a manager who likes to just kind of save that sort of chip just for when maybe I've got a few injuries or suspensions or attack a double or a blank game week. And it's also team dependent, right? And when I say team dependent, I mean your team. So it's all dependent on your situation in FPL. So I'm not going to say you need to use your free hit. You don't need to use your free hit. You know, you need to make that judgment as to how you're feeling about your own team. My solid advice would be don't necessarily need to use it right now. But I also wouldn't be, you know, overthinking it. Think if you want to use it, this is probably the team you should go for and just go for it, but that's up to you. So, yeah, let me know what you think about the team. Let me know if there's anyone that you think would outscore any of these players and should be in instead. And likewise, if you've got any questions, just pop them in the comments as well. It's always great to hear from you about your teams and talk FPL in general. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully, you're looking forward to game week 2, and I will see you in the next one.